The stars were quiet that night. Lieutenant Park Woo sat alone in the communication room of the Terran flagship Eternal Dawn. His eyes were tired. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. The ship moved slowly through the Vela expanse, a region of space so empty that even the stars seemed lonely. Nothing ever happened in the Vela expanse. That was why the fleet was there. It was a routine patrol, a boring mission. The kind of mission where soldiers wrote letters home and dreamed of their beds on Earth. Park Woo yawned and looked at his screens. Numbers and lines moved across them like waves on a digital ocean. The ship's computer, an artificial intelligence named Arya, monitored thousands of frequencies at once. If something important happened, Arya would tell him. Until then, his job was simply to watch and wait. A small light blinked on his console. Park Woo almost ignored it. Arya had already marked it as interference from a nearby star. Background noise, nothing important. But something made him stop. Something in his gut told him to look closer. He pulled up the frequency and listened. At first he heard only static, crackling sounds like fire burning in the void. Then beneath the noise he heard something else. A pattern, a rhythm that was too regular to be natural. Park Woo sat up straight. His tiredness vanished like smoke in wind. He ran the signal through the translation software. The computer worked for several long seconds. Then a voice emerged from the static. It was high and frightened. It belonged to someone young. "Please," the voice said. "If anyone can hear this, please help us. They are killing us. They are killing everyone. We have no weapons. We cannot fight. Please, someone, anyone, help us." The message repeated, again and again, a loop of desperation sent into the darkness of space. Park Woo's hands shook as he saved the recording. He checked the source. The signal came from a planet called Prime over 40 light-years away. The species there were called the... Park Woo searched the database and found almost nothing about them. They were peaceful. They had no military. They had no valuable resources. They were, according to the records, completely unremarkable. No one would come to save them. Park Woo grabbed his communicator and called Captain. Her voice was sharp when she answered, still alert despite the late hour. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "Captain, you need to hear this, now." 10 minutes later, stood in the communication room. Her face was hard as stone as she listened to the recording. The young alien's voice filled the small room, begging for help that would never come. "How long has this been broadcasting?" asked. "Based on the signal decay, at least 3 weeks, Park Woo said. "Maybe longer." "And no one has responded?" "No, Captain. They have no allies, no trade partners. No one has any reason to help them." Closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they burned with something dangerous. "Get me Admiral." Admiral was not a man who showed emotion. He had commanded fleets for 30 years. He had seen battles that would break lesser men. His face was weathered like old rock, and his voice was calm even in the worst storms. But when he listened to his message, something changed in his eyes. The command room was full now. Senior officers stood around the central table, their faces lit by holographic maps. The planet Prime floated in the air before them, surrounded by red markers that represented the blockade. "The Dominion has 47 warships in orbit," one officer reported. "We have 16. They outgun us nearly 3-1. They are also experienced killers," another officer added. "They have conquered dozens of worlds. They show no mercy to those who resist." "With respect, Admiral," a third officer said carefully, "this is not our fight. They are not allies. We have no treaty with them. Our mission is patrol, not rescue." Admiral said nothing. He stared at the hologram of the planet. On its surface, millions of innocent beings were dying while the galaxy looked away. "How long until they finish their conquest?" he asked quietly. "At current pace, perhaps 2 more weeks. They are being thorough. They want slaves, not corpses." Silence fell over the room. Every officer knew what was happening on that world. Every officer could imagine the fear, the pain, the hopelessness of a species that had called for help and received only silence. Admiral turned to face his officers. His eyes moved from face to face, measuring each one. 300 years ago, he said slowly, humanity was alone on a small blue planet. We fought each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves. And then we reached for the stars, hoping we would find something better out there. Hoping we would find others who understood what it meant to struggle, to suffer, to survive. He pointed at the hologram. There is a child on that planet. Her name is. She sat in front of a transmitter and begged the universe for help. She did not know if anyone would hear. She did not know if anyone would care. But she called anyway because hope was all she had left. Admiral's voice grew hard as iron. We heard her, and we will answer. He looked around the room one final time. Set course for Prime. All ships prepare for combat. We leave in 1 hour. No one argued. No one questioned. Every officer in that room understood something that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Humans were not built for safety. They were built for storms. The Seventh Fleet turned toward the darkness, and the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The humans were coming. The Terrans, those strange creatures from the death world called Earth, had received the distress signal, and instead of ignoring it like everyone else, they had changed course. They were flying straight toward the blockade. In the great halls of the collective, advisors gathered around their queen and spoke in worried whispers. They were an ancient species, wise and careful. They had survived for 10,000 years by avoiding unnecessary conflicts. The humans are fools, one advisor said. They outnumber them 3-1. This is suicide. Perhaps they do not understand what they face, another suggested. They are a young species. They have been in space for only 3 centuries. The Queen watched the tactical display in silence. She had studied humanity since they first left their world. She knew things about them that worried her deeply. They understand perfectly, she said quietly. That is what frightens me. Far across the galaxy, the Syndicate received the same news. There were traders and merchants, interested only in profit and survival. Their leaders laughed at the human decision. Let them die, the Syndicate master said. When they destroy their fleet, we will pick up the pieces. Dead humans mean cheap salvage. But one young trader did not laugh. He had met humans before. He had seen them work and fight and never give up. He stayed silent while his elders mocked, and in his heart, he wondered if they were making a terrible mistake. On the bridge of his command ship, Warlord received the intelligence report about the approaching human fleet. He was a massive creature, covered in thick scales the color of dried blood. His species, had built their empire on violence and fear. They took what they wanted and crushed anyone who tried to stop them. Read the report and laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. 16 ships, he said to his officers. 16 tiny ships crewed by soft-skinned mammals from a backwater world, and they think they can challenge the Dominion. Shall we send reinforcements, Warlord? One officer asked. No, threw the report aside. I want the galaxy to watch what happens to those who oppose us. These humans will serve as an example. When we are done with them, every species in the quadrant will know the cost of defiance. He looked out at the planet below, where his troops were rounding up the last survivors. Soon there would be no one left to resist. The humans were coming, but they would arrive only in time to die. Smiled with teeth like broken glass. Meanwhile, the Seventh Fleet continued its journey toward Prime. In the cargo bay of the Eternal Dawn, Sergeant Major stood before her Marines. These were the soldiers of Hound Company, the best ground fighters in the fleet. They had trained for years to fight in conditions that would kill any other species. High gravity, low gravity, poison air, extreme heat, freezing cold. Nothing stopped them. Was a small woman with short black hair, and scars on her hands from battles she never spoke about. Her voice was calm as she addressed her troops. "I will not lie to you," she said. "The mission ahead is dangerous. They are strong, they are brutal. Many of us will not come home." She paused and looked at the faces before her, young and old, men and women, all of them volunteers, all of them ready. But on that planet, there are innocent people dying, children hiding in the dark, waiting for help that never comes, families torn apart by monsters who see them as nothing more than property. Stepped closer to her soldiers. "We are going to change that. We are going to show the galaxy what humans do when someone cries for help. We answer, we fight, and we do not stop until the job is done." She raised her fist. "Hound Company, are you with me?" The response shook the walls. Every Marine raised their fist and roared with one voice. The sound traveled through the ship and other soldiers stopped to listen. Pilots looked up from their fighters. Engineers paused their work. Everyone felt it, the fire that was building in the heart of the fleet. On the medical deck, Dr. O prepared for what was coming. She had been a doctor for 20 years. She had saved countless lives and lost too many to count. The weight of those losses lived in her eyes, a sadness that never fully went away. But her hands were steady as she organized supplies and checked equipment. She knew they would not have enough medicine, not enough beds, not enough of anything. When the battle came, she would have to make impossible choices: who to save, who to let go. She had made those choices before. She would make them again. A young nurse approached her nervously. "Doctor, are you afraid?" Thought about the question for a moment. "Yes," she admitted. "I'm afraid. Only fools feel no fear, but fear does not stop us from doing what must be done." She put a hand on the nurse's shoulder. "When the wounded come, you will want to cry. You will want to run, but you will not. You will work and you will save every life you can. That is who we are." The nurse nodded slowly, finding strength in the doctor's quiet certainty. On the bridge, Admiral watched the stars blur past as the fleet jumped through space. In a few hours, they would arrive at Prime. In a few hours, the battle would begin. He activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice reached every ship, every soldier, every soul in the 7th Fleet. "This is Admiral. In a short time, we will face an enemy that believes we are weak. They think we are soft. They think we will break and run when the fight becomes hard." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They are wrong. We are the children of Earth. We were born on a world that tried to kill us every day, and we survived. We carry that strength with us wherever we go. Today, we use that strength not to conquer, but to protect, not to destroy, but to save." His final words rang like a bell in the darkness. Today, we remind the galaxy what it means to be human. Though we're waiting, the galaxy was watching. And the humans were coming. The 7th Fleet dropped out of hyperspace like wolves entering a sheep pen. Admiral's voice was steady as he gave the order. "All ships, weapons free, protect the transports, break their line." 47 warships waited in orbit around Prime. They were massive vessels, bristling with weapons, designed to inspire terror in their enemies. Against them stood 16 human ships. By any reasonable calculation, the battle should have been over before it began. They expected the humans to approach carefully, to probe their defenses, to look for weaknesses before committing to an attack. That was how civilized species fought wars. The humans did not fight like civilized species. Captain stood on the bridge of the Iron Will, her hands gripping the railing as her ship accelerated to full combat speed. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. No one spoke unnecessary words. Every person knew their job. Every person was ready. "Target the lead cruiser," commanded. "All weapons fire at will." The Iron Will screamed through space like a thrown spear. Its guns blazed. Missiles streaked toward the enemy. The cruiser returned fire, but the human ship was moving too fast, too aggressively. It closed the distance before they could properly respond. The first ship exploded in a ball of fire. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human destroyers dove into the formation, ignoring the damage they received, focused only on inflicting more damage than they suffered. Human fighters swarmed around enemy vessels like angry insects, their pilots pushing their machines beyond any safe limit. Warlord watched in growing confusion from his command ship. This made no sense. The humans were taking terrible casualties. They were losing fighters and frigates with every passing minute. Any rational commander would pull back, regroup, try to find a better strategy. But the humans did not pull back. They pushed harder. "They are insane," growled. "What kind of species throws away their lives like this?" His second officer studied the tactical display with growing alarm. "Warlord, we are losing ships faster than projected. Their weapons are. They are designed for close combat. They wanted to get inside our formation." Finally understood, but it was too late. The humans had never intended to fight a careful battle. They had intended to brawl, to turn the engagement into a bloody, chaotic mess where numbers meant less than courage and determination. And in that kind of fight, no species in the galaxy could match the children of Earth. On the surface of Prime, the sky burned with falling debris. Sergeant Major stood in the open door of a drop ship, watching the ground rush up to meet her. Behind her, 50 Marines of Hound Company prepared for combat. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot announced. "Zone is hot, expect immediate contact." Pulled down her helmet visor. "Hound Company, remember the mission. Secure the evacuation zone, protect the civilians, kill anything with scales." The dropship slammed into the ground. The doors burst open. Humans poured out into a nightmare. The capital city was burning. Buildings had collapsed into rubble. Bodies lay in the streets, civilians who had tried to flee and been caught by soldiers. The air smelled of smoke and death. Warriors turned toward the landing zone, surprised by the sudden arrival. They were tall and powerful, covered in natural armor, carrying weapons that could cut a human in half. Raised her rifle and fired. The first soldier fell, then the second, then the third. "Move," she shouted. "Form up and push forward." The battle for the city began. It was not clean or elegant. It was brutal and bloody, fought at close range with bullets and blades. They were strong, but the humans were fast and adaptable. They used the rubble for cover. They flanked enemy positions. They helped each other, covering retreats, sharing ammunition, carrying wounded comrades to safety. A warrior charged with a massive axe. She dodged the first swing, rolled under the second, and put 3 rounds into the creature's chest before it could recover. It fell at her feet, still trying to reach her even as it died. "Stubborn things," she muttered, stepping over the body. In orbit, the battle reached its climax. The iron will was burning. Half its weapons were destroyed. Fires raged through multiple decks. By any reasonable standard, the ship should have retreated. Captain gave a different order. "All ahead full, target the enemy flagship. We are going to ram them." Her bridge crew did not hesitate. They had served with her for years. They trusted her completely. The iron will accelerated towards command ship. Weapons pounded the human destroyer, tearing holes in its armor, killing crew members, destroying systems. But the ship kept coming. Battered and burning, it crossed the final distance. The impact was tremendous. The iron will crashed into the engine section of the flagship, crippling its ability to move or escape. Both ships locked together in a twisted embrace of metal and fire. Pulled herself from the wreckage of her bridge. Blood ran down her face. Her left arm hung useless at her side. Around her, survivors struggled to their feet. "Damage report," she coughed. "Captain, the ship is lost," her first officer said. "We need to evacuate." Looked through the shattered viewport at the crippled flagship. Somewhere on that ship, Warlord was still alive. "Not yet," she said. Get me a weapon, we are not finished. Across the galaxy, other species watched the battle unfold on their screens. They saw human ships exploding. They saw human soldiers dying. They saw a fleet of 16 vessels tearing apart an enemy 3 times their size through sheer aggression and will. The Queen watched in stunned silence. They do not know how to surrender, she whispered. They do not know how to stop. The Syndicate Master felt cold fear creeping into his heart. What have we been trading with all these years? On Prime, the lines were breaking. Survivors fled toward their ships, trying to escape the relentless human assault. Behind them, the Marines of Hound Company pushed forward, securing block after block, rescuing civilians who had hidden in basements and ruins. Found a young girl hiding behind a collapsed wall. The child was small and fragile, with large eyes full of tears. She flinched when she saw the armored human approaching. Knelt down slowly. She removed her helmet so the child could see her face. "It is okay," she said softly. "We are here to help. You are safe now." The child stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, she reached out and took the soldier's hand. Above them, the fleet was dying, and the galaxy would never forget what it had witnessed. The guns had finally stopped. Smoke rose from the ruins of the capital city. In orbit, broken ships drifted like dead whales in a dark ocean. The battle was over, but the silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the silence of exhaustion and grief. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and looked at the casualty reports. 5 ships destroyed, 3 more too damaged to repair, over 2,000 human soldiers and crew members dead, many more wounded. The numbers burned in his mind like hot iron. Each one was a life. Each one was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. They had come here knowing the cost, and they had paid it willingly. But knowing that did not make it easier. On the surface, Dr. O worked in what had once been a school building. The classrooms had become emergency surgery rooms. The playground had become a triage area. Wounded humans and lay side by side, waiting for help. Had not slept in 36 hours. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were red with exhaustion and tears she refused to let fall. There was no time for tears. There was only the next patient and the next and the next. A young Marine was brought in on a stretcher. His legs were gone below the knees, lost to a weapon. He was conscious, staring at the ceiling with glassy eyes. "Am I going to die?" he asked quietly. Looked at his wounds. She had seen enough to know the truth, but she also knew what he needed to hear. "Not today," she said firmly. "Not on my watch. Stay with me, soldier." She worked for hours to save him. When it was done, when his condition was stable, she allowed herself one moment of relief. Then she moved to the next patient. Across the city, Sergeant Major led the final sweep for survivors. Her body was broken but still moving. 3 wounds, 2 from bullets, 1 from a blade. The medics had patched her up and told her to rest. She had ignored them. Her Marines followed her without question. They were just as battered, just as exhausted, but they would not stop until the mission was complete. In a collapsed building, they found a family huddled in a basement. An elder, 2 adults, and 3 children. When the humans appeared, the elder raised his hands in surrender, expecting the worst. Spoke gently, "We are not here to hurt you. We are here to take you somewhere safe." The elder stared at her for a long moment. Then he began to weep. The sound was strange, different from human crying, but the emotion behind it was the same. "Why?" he asked through his tears. "Why did you come? We have nothing to give you. We cannot repay this debt." Helped him to his feet. "There is no debt. Come on. Let us get your family out of here." On the crippled wreck of the flagship, a different scene was unfolding. Warlord had barricaded himself on the bridge with his personal guards. He knew the battle was lost. He knew his fleet was destroyed. But he would not surrender. Surrender was for the weak. A human boarding team cut through the doors, led them personally, despite her wounds. She had left her Marines to continue the rescue mission and taken volunteers for this final task. The bridge was dark, lit only by emergency lights and sparking consoles. Bodies lay everywhere, killed in the earlier fighting. At the far end of the room, waited with his curved blade drawn. "So," he growled, "the insects have come to finish the job. Do you think you have won, human? You have destroyed my fleet, yes, but the Dominion will send more ships, more soldiers. We will burn your pathetic world to ash." Walked toward him slowly. She was limping. Blood seeped through her bandages. By any measure, she was in no condition to fight. But she did not stop. "You attacked innocent people," she said quietly. "You killed children. You made slaves of those who could not fight back." She raised her own blade, a combat knife that seemed tiny compared to his weapon. "Today you answer for that." Laughed and charged. He was fast for his size, faster than any human. His blade swept down with enough force to cut in half, but she was not there. She had moved, sliding to the side, ducking under his arm. Her knife found the gap in his armor, the soft spot where his scales met. Blood sprayed, roared in pain, and swung again. The fight was brutal and short, was stronger, bigger, more experienced, but he was also arrogant. He had never fought an opponent who simply refused to fall. Took 2 more wounds during the battle, one across her shoulder, one along her ribs, but she kept moving, kept striking, kept refusing to die. Her final blow caught in the throat. The warlord stumbled backward, clutching at the wound. His blade clattered to the floor. He fell to his knees, staring at the small human woman who had defeated him. "Impossible," he whispered. "You are just humans." Stood over him, breathing hard, barely able to stand. "Yes," she said, "we are." Collapsed and did not move again. Back on Prime, Elder was brought to meet Admiral. The leader was old and frail, his body marked by the suffering of recent weeks. But he walked without help, determined to show what dignity remained. The 2 leaders stood in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful plaza. Human soldiers moved past them, carrying supplies, helping refugees, doing the endless work of rebuilding. "I do not understand," said softly. "Your people have died here, your ships are destroyed. And for what? For strangers you had never met, for a species with nothing to offer." Admiral looked at the chaos around them. He thought about the lives lost, the families that would receive terrible news, the empty chairs at tables back on Earth. "Someone sent a message," he said finally. "A young voice crying for help in the darkness. We could not ignore it. We cannot ever ignore it. That is who we are." Was silent for a long moment. "Then perhaps," he said quietly, "there is still hope for this galaxy after all." Around them, humans and worked together to clear rubble and tend to the wounded. The sun was setting over the ruined city, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It was the first sunset of a new world. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Prime. The galaxy had changed, not suddenly, not completely, but in ways that would echo through history. The story of what the humans had done spread from world to world, told in 1,000 different languages. Some called it madness, others called it heroism, but no one forgot. On Earth, the recovery ships had returned home. Families gathered at spaceports to welcome survivors and mourn the dead. Flags flew at half-staff across every human colony. The price of compassion was counted and remembered. Admiral stood at a memorial service in the city of Seoul. 10,000 people had gathered to honor the fallen. Behind him, a wall of stone displayed the names of every human who had died at Prime. 2,347 names carved into black granite. He had memorized every single one. "These soldiers did not fight for conquest," he said to the crowd. "They did not fight for glory or profit. They fought because someone asked for help. They fought because that is what humans do when innocent lives are in danger." His voice grew thick with emotion, but he continued. We cannot bring them back. We cannot undo the sacrifice they made, but we can honor them by remembering why they fell. They fell for strangers. They fell for people they had never met and would never know. And in doing so, they showed the galaxy the best of what humanity can be. He stepped back from the podium. The crowd was silent. Many were crying. Others stood with their hands over their hearts, paying respect to heroes who would never come home. Far away on Prime, the work of rebuilding continued. The capital city was slowly rising from its ruins. Human engineers worked alongside workers, teaching them construction techniques from Earth. Medical centers had been established, staffed by volunteers who had chosen to stay behind when the fleet departed. Dr. O was one of them. She walked through the new hospital she had helped design, checking on patients and training local doctors. The haunted look in her eyes had softened slightly. She had lost patients during the battle. She would carry those losses forever. But she had also saved lives, and now she was saving more. A young nurse approached her nervously. "Doctor, you have a visitor." Turned to find Elder waiting at the entrance. The old leader walked slowly, his body still weak from the ordeal he had survived, but there was light in his eyes that had not been there before. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "not just for what you did during the battle, for staying, for helping us rebuild." Smiled gently. "This is my purpose, healing, teaching, making things better. I would do it anywhere. I am glad I can do it here." Nodded slowly. "Your species confuses me, Doctor. You come from a world of death and danger. By all logic, you should be violent and selfish, focused only on your own survival. Instead, you cross the stars to help strangers." Thought about the question for a moment. "Perhaps that is exactly why," she said. "Our world taught us that survival alone is not enough. We learned that the only way to face the darkness is together. It does not matter if the person beside you is family or stranger, human or alien. When someone needs help, you help. That is the lesson Earth taught us." Considered her words carefully. "Then perhaps," he said, "the galaxy needs more worlds like Earth." In a ceremony hall the ancient queen addressed her council. "We have watched humanity for 3 centuries, she said. "We called them children, we called them reckless. We were wrong." She displayed images from the Battle of Prime, ships burning, soldiers fighting, humans carrying wounded to safety. "They are not children, they are survivors, and they have shown us something we had forgotten. Strength is not measured by the wars you win, it is measured by the people you save." The council murmured among themselves. Some were still skeptical, but the Queen's words had planted a seed. Across the galaxy, the Syndicate quietly changed its policies. Human traders were given better terms. Human ships were treated with respect instead of condescension. The young trader who had stayed silent while his elders mocked the humans was now a senior merchant. He made sure his people remembered what they had witnessed. The Dominion retreated behind its borders, licking its wounds. Warlord was dead. His fleet was destroyed. For the first time in generations, the Dominion was afraid, not of human weapons or ships, but of human will, of a species that would die for strangers without hesitation. They would not test humanity again for a very long time. Captain spent 4 months in recovery. Her injuries were severe. Doctors told her she might never walk again. She told them they were wrong and then proved it. When she was finally cleared for duty, she was promoted to Rear Admiral. At the ceremony, she made only one request, that the name Iron will be given to a new ship. The request was granted. Rear Admiral would return to space within the year, commanding a vessel named after the one she had sacrificed. The crew who volunteered to serve under her filled the roster in hours. Sergeant Major received the Terran Union's highest military honor. The ceremony was held in the same plaza where Admiral had spoken with Elder, stood stiffly at attention while medals were pinned to her chest. When asked to speak, she walked to the podium and pulled out a folded piece of paper. On it were names. 112 names, the soldiers of Hound Company who had not survived. She read every single one aloud. When she finished, she looked at the crowd and said simply, "They are the heroes. I was just lucky enough to walk beside them." On a hill overlooking the rebuilt capital city, a young girl sat watching the stars. Her name was. She was the one who had sent the distress signal all those months ago. She had not known if anyone would hear. She had not known if anyone would care. But she had called anyway because hope was all she had. And humans had answered. She looked up at the night sky, trying to find the star called Sol. It was too far away to see with her eyes, but she knew it was there. A small yellow sun in a distant part of the galaxy, home to a species that had changed everything. She had met some of them now. Admiral, who was quiet and kind despite the weight he carried. Doctor, who had treated her wounds and told her stories about Earth. Sergeant, who had found her hiding in the ruins and promised everything would be okay. They were strange creatures, soft and fragile compared to many species, short-lived, easily broken. But something in them refused to stay broken. Smiled and whispered a prayer to the stars. It was a new prayer, one that her people had started saying after the humans came. "Thank you," she said softly, "for sending us the..." Somewhere in the galaxy, on a quiet patrol route, a human communications officer detected a faint signal, a distress call from a species he had never heard of. They were under attack. They had no allies. No one was coming to help. He saved the recording and contacted his captain. The ship changed course. And across the stars, the pattern repeated. Wherever there was darkness, wherever there was suffering, wherever someone cried for help, the humans would be there. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because long ago, on a brutal world that tried to kill them every day, they had learned the most important lesson of all. The only way forward is together. And no one gets left behind.